Hello and welcome, or welcome back to Language, Culture, and Dr. Lou. And today I'd like to talk about how the federal government is engaging in serious censorship and has been since, since Trump 2.0, since Trump took power about a year or so ago. And I have the title here is Trump's list of banned and unacceptable words, but these are not all coming exactly from the White House, although he has done executive orders eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as uh, one recognizing only two sexes and things like that. So there's that. But a lot of this is also coming from other federal agencies that are part of the executive branch as well. And it's really, really worrisome because not only have a lot of these words I'm about to present been scrubbed off of all our federal government websites, um, at least the websites of these agencies anyway, but also if someone depends on grant funding from the United States government, like lots of researchers have federal funding grants for their research, and lots of other groups depend on federal funding. And if you want to keep your federal funding, you better not use any of these words, right? There's the threat. They could nix your money, kind of like they did to NPR and PBS, but those weren't over censorship exactly in the same way. But anyway, let's get into what exact words are we not supposed to use, and are the federal government agencies not allowing people to use and not using themselves. Um, and not all these words are banned per se. A lot of them have been flagged for review. And so, again, that could put your federal funding in danger if you're using a lot of these words. And they're on a whole slew of topics from environmentalism to LGBTQ plus issues to women's issues to vaccines and other things, like lots and lots of things. So I'd like to provide you with this whole list so that you can see all the damn topics that we can no longer really have intelligent and difficult conversations about, because we're not even allowed to use the words that we need to express all these things. And all this suggests very nefarious goals and nefarious means being done by this government, because again, they're trying to get us not to use certain words and not to be exposed to them. Therefore, they're trying to make sure we're not thinking about these things. And so that is, well, that's goes right down to mind control now, doesn't it? Anyway, so let's get into it. And this, just to give some more details from Pen America back in March of last year, uh, published a list of words, and that has grown very much since then. But I have a quote from them saying, a growing list of words and materials is being scrubbed from government websites and documents and flagged for review by federal agencies in an attempt by the Trump administration to remove all references, um, not only to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also to climate change, vaccines, and a host of other topics. So that's by Pen America. And I will, by the way, in the description of this video, I will include a link so you can read their whole article. And these are coming from other sources too, like Pen America is not the only group who went ahead and compiled a list of these banned and unacceptable words. It's also been reported on by Politico and the Washington Post and other reputable media sources. So let's have at it. And so they have another quote from the same article that I mentioned where words and phrases reportedly no longer considered acceptable by the Trump administration, from abortion to women, and including disability, elderly, Native American, and unsurprisingly, the Gulf of Mexico. Um, so as you can see, there's lots of different topics there. And how the heck do you prevent people from using the word women or elderly, right? Or Native American or anything. This is not just all coming from Trump's executive order, like the banning of the use of the words Gulf of Mexico. Um, but it's also, yeah, it's all over the place. And as someone who works in academia, we do depend a lot on funding for research, and this puts your research in danger if you're using too many of their flagged words. It's scary, scary deal. And here is the original list of about 250 or so words that Pen America published back in March of last year. And this is about 250 words, and I'm not going to zoom in to these because I will present them a little later, much more legible and big. But just to give you the idea, this was how many words were already either banned or flagged as unacceptable by the federal government by about 10 or 11 months ago. And since then, at least 140 more words or so have been added to this list. Which is very scary because it ends up with, I've identified a total of, I think, 395 words altogether. So it's grown a lot. And so they are still engaging in this, as far as I can tell, and not for good purposes. Anyway, so let's take a look at some of these words and just see what topics does our federal government not even want us thinking about or talking about, right? And we can get an idea of that through the different words, such as abortion, which that is unsurprising because um, during Trump's campaign and all that, he was very pleased with helping get Roe v. Wade overturned and all that. Very proud of himself through appointing the judges to the Supreme Court and all that. So that doesn't surprise me that abortion is on there. But words like activism, activists, advocacy, and advocate and advocates have all been flagged. So they don't want anybody speaking up against them now, do they? And then, of course, things related to DEI, like affirmative action. And oh, look at how many words, a couple of words regarding affordability are there, like affordable home, affordable housing, and all that. And yeah, that scares me because the rich and powerful don't necessarily understand how big of a deal affordability is to the rest of us who are just living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet. This is all really, really scary to me. So anyway, yeah, we got all this stuff. And one thing that I've noticed there is agricultural water, and there are multiple mentions to water in these uh in this list of banned words and phrasing. And I think it's all about corporate polluters not being held accountable, but that's just my opinion. So, what other words we got on here? Oh, more things having to do with environmentalism, like air pollution and alternative energy. And yeah, we've got that. And then, of course, we've got things related to gender, like assigned at birth, and assigned female at birth, or assigned male at birth. how are we supposed to talk about these issues if we can't even use the words that we need to describe them? That's scary. And guess what? Autism is up there too. And that's kind of funny because our Department of Health and Human Services seems very convinced that vaccines are what's causing autism. And apparently, pregnant women taking Tylenol, right? You remember that story? So, yeah, autism didn't surprise me that that one's on there. And also, I'm not surprised that some references to bias and biased and biases are all being taken out of the mix of things that we researchers can use, of words that we can use, and words that the government websites will include. It's all pretty scary. And so here's some more. And again, we can see a lot of things being related to um, the environment, like bioenergy, biofuel, biogas, and then LGBTQ plus issues like biologically female, biologically male, and even bisexual, right? That's really scary. And but LGBTQ plus people are not the only minorities that they're trying to erase by erasing the words that we use to describe ourselves, such as black, black, and Latinx, which I kind of agree. I hate the term Latinx um, because that's not how it goes in Spanish. It's Latino or Latina. Learn a little grammar of the language you're borrowing a word from instead of just Latinx. But anyway, that's a personal opinion. I kind of could do without any more mention of that word. But then again, that's not free speech, is it? Telling people what words they can and cannot use, that makes speech very much anything other than free, right? And again, more environmentalism words like carbon footprint, carbon markets, carbon pricing, carbon sequestration, and all that, and even changing climate. And that to me is sort of odd that changing climate is on there because how are you going to ignore the reality that we see going on in front of us of the climate changing? Um, yeah, that to me kind of kind of scary. And maybe you see some other words in here that you're just as horrified by as I am by the ones that I've mentioned already. But and we're still in the C's, so we got lots and lots more words to go, such as clean energy, clean fuel, clean power, clean water, and even climate, right? So I don't know. I think this might be a little defending of the corporate polluters and ignoring the citizens who are very worried about what's happening to our environment. Anyway, same goes again for climate models, climate resilience, climate risk, climate science, even climate science. How are we not supposed to use that word? That anyway. And again, climate change is on there. That's yeah, very scary. And what else we got? We're still in the seas. Again, this is a very long list. Like I said, I think there's about 395 words on here. So it's going to be a long alphabet now, is it? And the one here that surprises me the very most, COVID-19. How are we supposed to pretend that COVID-19 doesn't exist? Like we need the right nomenclature for words if we want to have intelligent conversations about them. And how are you going to talk about COVID-19? Anyway, and then of course, again, it's not just the LGBTQ plus community who's under threat by this, it's also lots of other minorities. And we can see that through the inclusion of words like cultural competence, cultural differences, cultural heritage, cultural relative. uh, relevance, rather, cultural sensitivity, and all these things. Um, and the last word on this slide, all the way down below me on the bottom, DEI, of course, because the Trump administration had a big war against DEI, as you can see in some of the other lists: DEIA, DEIAB, DEIJ. All these banned or at least flagged because we're not supposed to really use them, not in the government websites and not in any organization that gets federal funding from the government. That's really scary. And again, and that's sad. The words disabilities, disability, disabled, and then disadvantaged and discriminated, discrimination. That to me is kind of scary that we're not supposed to use any of these words, or at least not in any official capacity if we're members of an organization that depends on government funding anyway. This is all pretty scary to me. And and why the heck would they ban discussion of federal policies, right? Sounds like they don't want anybody questioning them. And now we're from the D's onto the E's finally, but many more things affecting minorities in here, like diversified, diverse groups, diversity and inclusion, diversity in the workplace, all this. And how do you get people to stop using the word elderly anymore, right? Are we just supposed to call them all old people? That sounds a little insulting. Like, let's not take the politeness out of our speech, right? This is a little scary. And again, some environmental stuff like electric vehicle, and environmental justice and emissions, all of these things. So to me, yeah, that screams there's a couple angles that our government is trying to censor us on, and I don't like it one bit. And so then we get to um, a little further into the E's and into the F's eventually with environmental quality and equal opportunity or equality. Really, to me, that's ridiculous. The US government wants us not to even use the word equality. I mean, isn't that supposed to be one of the principles that America was founded on, right? In the Constitution, all men are created equal, is what it says anyway. Let's forget that because we can't even use the word equality anymore. And what's even more strange to me is they're taking away the words female and females and feminism. That screams sexism to me anyway. And of course, feminism. That's yeah, that's very much anti-woman as far as I can tell. And again, of course, we had abortion being banned, so is the word fetus, right? So that's yeah, all pretty scary to me. And where else we're going now that we're at the F's and moving beyond that into the G's, we got the word gay, um, and the word gender and gender based violence, gender diversity, gender dysphoria. So they're coming after the trans folks too, not just the gay ones, but also non-binary and transgender folks as well. That's what I see in this list of words where we're not supposed to talk about gender expression or write about gender identity or gender ideology, or even gender nonconformity. This is all pretty scary. And gender affirming care, which has been banned in a lot of states, especially gender affirming care for transgendered kids, for transgendered minors. That is very widely banned all over the place. But it's really, and how are we getting rid of the word genders or gendered, by the way? That to me, as a linguist, doesn't really make any sense because we need all the words that we need to describe things to represent the reality around us. That's really scary. And also, we're not supposed to use global warming. I think global warming is kind of well, it's not the greatest term to use when you're talking about climate change because people end up not understanding that global warming sometimes means the winters get colder because of the destabilization of the polar vortex and whatnot. So, but still, global warming, or even green. And so that's one example. The word green is an example of how can we get rid of these words without even considering the consequences of that? I mean, green is a color after all, right? Just ask Kermit the Frog. Um, anyway, and then we've got many other stuff. And the least surprising one in this whole damn list is the Gulf of Mexico, because that was indeed an executive order that will now be called the Gulf of America. But it turns out that an executive order from the US cannot keep people from all the other countries in the world of using the term Gulf of Mexico when they're speaking English anyway. And so, and why is there so many disease related things in here, like the bird flu? Um, that to me, well, the just screams a little incompetence or possibly cover up in the Department of Health and Human Services anyway. Um, and notice the word Hispanic appears here. We're not supposed to use the word Hispanic, so um, that's an attempted eraser of a whole large group of people, in my opinion. Seems to be that way. We're not supposed to talk about them, so let's all, pretend they don't exist. By the way, that's sarcasm anyway. I don't actually mean we should, but, and even the word identity. How do you take the word identity away and still be able to have an intelligent discussion about identity? I don't really get that. And immigrants, that might be a reaction to all the mess that ICE is as far as being a political liability for the Trump administration these days and mostly a PR liability. Um, but yeah, and so we're also taking away implicit biases and all that. Seems like they want to go backwards, like get rid of a lot of the information and knowledge that we've accumulated over the years and step back into the day when nobody knew any better, right? Well, yeah, let's please go back to the bad old days, right? And then, of course, we've got many more words, and these ones all start with I. At least we're into the I's now. And so apparently, our government is against inclusion or being inclusive or inclusiveness, inclusivity, all of these. Yep. Which that doesn't really surprise me because that screams nationalism and white nationalism, so nationalist racism and all that. We wouldn't want to include anybody now, would we? When it's so much easier to just exclude and deport them all, right? Anyway, that's very upsetting. And why are we not supposed to use the word injustice? As if injustice is not a thing anymore. Yeah, that's really scary. And the word intersectionality, that's that's going along with all these um, racially based terms that we're not supposed to use, terms that highlight the diversity in this country, which, in my opinion, is one of our strongest or our biggest strengths is our diversity in this country. But apparently, white nationalists don't don't really agree with that, do they? Anyway, and of course, there's the word intersex, because again, we're trying. There was an executive order where we're only supposed to recognize two sexes, male and female. So that leaves the whole intersex population just boop on their own and out of the picture. And yeah, scary. I think a lot of this is an attempt to erase a lot of people and erase a lot of people's identities, at least from public discourse anyway. It's very, yeah, it's very upsetting to me. I know I keep saying that, but I am super upset with all of this. And again, Latinx is being taken out, and look at that, lesbian, LGBT, LGBTQ. I'm almost surprised they didn't add LGBTQ plus to this or LGBTQIA, but I'm not trying to give them ideas for what other words they should add to it. But this list is not very exhaustive or comprehensive, in my opinion, anyway. And so then more uh, about keeping women down because we're not supposed to use the term male dominated or even marginalized. So this scares me for a lot of the people who don't have all the power. And oh yeah, marijuana. That to me is kind of funny because more and more states have legalized marijuana and more people are using it. And there's interesting research coming out lately that among middle-aged and elderly users of marijuana, in a lot of ways, this can actually be good for our brains. And anyway, I'm not getting into that right now. That's not what this video is about. And that's totally unsurprising to me that they want to ban the word measles, probably because of all the measles outbreaks that keep popping up. I think one just popped up in um, one of the Dakotas, uh, or possibly one of the Carolinas. Anyway, measles outbreaks just keep on coming, and that's because the measles vaccine only works on everybody if at least or works to the benefit of society if at least I think the number is at least 93% of people are vaccinated. And then you have your government tell you, oh, you don't need to be vaccinated, don't worry about it. Of course, measles outbreaks are entirely foreseeable and predictable from there, but anyway. And so we also have the word microplastics again. For people concerned about environmental issues, we really need the word microplastics because that's now impacting our health. And it does make me worry how many words related to health and disease are on here because isn't our Department of Health and Human Services supposed to help us be healthier? Uh, but I guess not, according to this list of words, anyway. And multicultural, again, going after the minorities and diversity and all that, and even the word Native American. That's yeah, again, you're trying to erase a huge group of people, or at least not let us talk about them or write about them, right? And again, non-binary in two different spellings and non-citizen. So this goes back to issues with ICE and the deportation campaign that our government has going on right now. Um, anyway, beyond non-citizen, we also have non-conforming, which speaks to all the people living in the margins, on the fringes of society. Uh, and I don't really like getting rid of all these words necessarily. And what's funny is that nuclear energy and nuclear power are on this list, but I still hear those used in a lot of reporting on the radio and on television and all that. So it's good that not everybody is just bowing down to the federal government and censoring themselves completely, right? To me, that's pretty much a big thing. And then more disease related and health related things like peanut allergies. Anyway, and person centered care, or even people centered care, and that. And polarization on the strikes me as a funny word to be included in the words we're not supposed to use, and government agencies and people depending on government funding not supposed to use, because polarization, that seems like a perfect word to describe our country lately, being polarized, because we can't even have an intelligent political conversation with anybody anymore, because it's always us versus them and all that. It's all kind of scary. So do again, keep reading these words for yourself. I'm not mentioning all of them, but I was really surprised to see that opioids was on here, because that has been a serious crisis for the last decade or so. We got people ODing on opioids and getting all addicted to opioids. And hopefully some of that is getting better. And it's interesting that I didn't notice when we're back in the apps that fentanyl, I didn't see that word on there. But anyway, and some more words. And now look at this. We're cruising through the alphabet. We're all the way getting up to R. And so what's funny, how would a government agency's website not be able to use the word political on there? That to me is interesting. Much less the word policing, right? Don't we have a federal government agency is supposed to work against pollution and all that? But all these things about pollution are not supposed to be written or said um, by any of these anyway. And what about pregnant people? Are we pretending that pregnant people um are not a thing anymore? Like, how do we still having babies if there's no present pregnant persons or pregnant people around, huh? Anyway, to me, a lot of this is funny because uh, it's not like we have a million different ways to say all these things. And unsurprising to me, again, queer is on there. So again, they're coming after the gays, trying to race us, and as well as race and ethnicity, racial diversity, racial inequality, racial justice, racially, racism, all those things. And again, this is weird to me because the US has always been known as a very racially diverse country, um, well, for the longest time anyway. And so, how are we supposed to talk about America without recognizing the racial diversity of our society? Anyway, that's wow. And so, runoff and raw water. This is going again to environmentalism and trying to protect our environment. And so, it's a safe drinking water. And of course, sexuality is on here. So I'm seeing a lot of themes about LGBTQ plus community and about women and about people of various races, all that. So yeah, let's go after the people who have the least power of all, right? And we have the word sex right here, which is kind of funny because sex is not just about sexual activity and whatnot. Sex, um, that's the biological part of gender, not gender as the human social construct, but that's just plain medicine, biology, and reproduction. Sex is, yeah, important towards discussing any of those things now, isn't it? And it's funny that they have um, sociocultural, socioeconomic. Sorry, I doubled a couple of these words here. I didn't notice that I already included them and that they are a couple inches away. Sorry about that. But then more things about environmental conservation like soil pollution, solar energy, solar power. How are we supposed to fight against climate change if we're pretending none of this exists and that we have no solutions for it either? That's scary, very scary. And oh, now we're getting all the way through the S's into the T's. Fantastic. So don't worry, this video won't last a million years, right? And and we have stem cell or fetal tissue research. That's interesting because there is a lot of important research going on in that field, but how are we supposed to discuss it if we can't even use these words, right? And stereotypes. So we're what, pretending those don't exist anymore as well? Eek. And sustainability, things regarding sustainable and sustainability. To me, that's important to have ways to talk about all that too. And then tax breaks, tax credits, and whatnot. How do we talk about taxes without including tax breaks or tax credits or tax subsidies? That's weird. And they, them. There you go. There's another attack on the non-binary folks and the transgender, anyway. And oh, we've got every time I turn the page and look at more words, it's even more upsetting because how are you supposed to have even conversations about stuff uh, if you can't use any of the words we need to talk about them? I don't get that. Um, And again, going after the transgender with transsexual, transsexualism, transsexuals, transgender, transgender military personnel, transgender people, all on there. And that is, I do believe, in an intentional attempt to try to erase all the history of the service of LGBTQ plus individuals in our military. And right there, transgender military personnel. I know Trump has now pretty much banned them twice. I think, yeah, I think he did that in the first term, and then that got walked back a little bit, taken back, and then he comes in the second time and does this again. It's very upsetting, but how are we supposed to talk about traumatic events and trauma if we can't use either of those words? Anyway, this is all um, very confusing to me. As somebody who I think that language is super important because that's how we communicate with each other. How are we taking all these things out of the language without adding alternatives, adding new things to use instead. Again, I think they just really didn't foresee all the consequences of this. Like, how do you ban just plain regular old words like trauma? Um, I don't get that. And then, of course, oh, now we're getting all the way towards the end of the alphabet. We're already getting up to W, so good. Uh, and tribal is taken out. Well, that sort of makes sense when, after all, they wanted to take away the word Native American. So why not tribal? Anyway, and unconscious bias. See, that to me is something we should all recognize that we all have some unconscious biases, and we need to be aware of this so as we don't all get will run by our unconscious biases anyway. And then we've got there we go. The word vaccines is right on here. So why we are we going to eliminate the word vaccines? Is that because, again, we're trying to pretend they're not part of reality anymore? I don't get that. What about victim or victims? I wonder if that has anything to do with the Epstein files. Eh? We gotta wonder. Gotta wonder. Now, of course, more things to do with environmentalism like water collection, water conservation, water distribution, water efficiency, and water management. Um, yeah, that's all very strange to me. How could we go without being able to talk about water, what we do with it, and conserving or distributing it or anything? I don't know. So I think this is the very last little bit. Yep, there we go. The last little bit, and I didn't find any words ending in with X, Y, or Z that are being banned or flagged for review. But again, more stuff about environmentalism and water. So, water pollution, water quality, water storage, water treatment, water privilege, not supposed to use them, or wind power, right? As if that's not a thing, as if that's not part of how we're trying to fight climate change anyway. And then again, one of the most surprising words on here, what two of the most surprising words on here, how could you ban the word woman or women? Or even if it's not one of those are not two of the banned words, what if they're just two words that are flagged for review that could put your funding in jeopardy if you use them? Because that's a plain everyday word. Um, like, I didn't see the word girl on there, but woman and women. Okay, whatever. And women and underrepresented or women in leadership. Again, I think they're kind of coming after the women here. But anyway, I hope you did appreciate this little glimpse of all these words. And I should have told you much earlier in the video. Feel free to pause it anytime if you want to get a better reading of these words. I know I'm going a little fast through them, but that's because there were 395 words to cover here, and you can't do that in like 2 minutes. So I'm trying to keep the clip going a little bit. And I guess my bigger point to this is how are we supposed to have intelligent or difficult conversations about LGBTQ plus issues or issues impacting minorities or women if we can't use all these words that I've just presented here. And how are we even supposed to talk about climate change or fighting climate change if we can't use those words there? Um, so anyway, it's all very disturbing to me, and I told myself I would um, do this video, and I know it's getting political, but I tried not to get too political. Like for instance, I didn't use the word fascism once. Oops, just broke that rule, but hey, there we go. But it all kind of screams fascism to me, like eliminating regular words that everybody uses, and not just from government websites, but also from any organizations that depend on government funding. That's really scary. But thank you so much for watching this little video, and I hope you do get it. Give it a thumbs up. And please, I would welcome any comments you have on this. Please include your comments. What do you think of all the censorship going on here? Could this be a good thing? I don't think so, but hey, you might have a different opinion there. So anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to you in my next video. And so until then, I'll catch you around next time. Bye-bye.